All right, so for our latest project, we're going to be taking a look at this Hitachi AM/FM stereo receiver. This is a model SR-2004. Obviously, from the looks of it, it's from that golden age of monster receivers. This unit belongs to one of my customers here locally in my area, and he has a very wide collection of this type of stereo equipment, and this is just his latest purchase. He says he bought this and it was told that it does work, but he brought it by because he wants everything kind of checked out and see if it indeed is working fully and any work that might be needing to be done to it. So in this video, we'll take a look at it, find out if it's working, all inputs, the tuner, and everything involved in that. And of course, we'll do a good visual inspection of it. Just taking a look at it with that half wooden top and the metal grate on the back of it, very eerily similar to Pioneer's models from back in this time period. So not sure if maybe one of the engineers from Pioneer left and went to Hitachi, but it does have a striking resemblance to Pioneer's receivers from back then. So as always, we'll come in, we're going to have a look at the buttons on the front, the controls they provided, as well as the connections in the back of it. So don't really know anything about it. We'll be finding all that out together and see if we can figure out if it is indeed working the way it's supposed to. As for our intro music this time, we're checking out Robin Trower's 1974 masterpiece, Bridge of Sighs. And this is one of those albums I go back to time and time again, full of great music. And we're just going to check out a little bit of one of my favorite tracks, To Rolling Stone. Let's check out a little bit of this and then we'll get started on the Hitachi.
Circus starts and it's so dark and late. Please be so kind, never to wake me. I think I'll just sit this one out. But I'm two rolling stones. Two rolling stones. Yeah. But two rolling stones. Just like a rolling stone. Rolling, rolling stone. Yeah. Two rolling stones.
All right, let's pick back up and we'll have a quick tour of the controls and buttons on the front of the unit. Starting on the far left here, we do have a hard mechanical power switch. Tone controls after that, bass, treble, and of course incorporating mid-range into that as well. Very popular feature for back in these days. They give you some selectable bass frequencies here, 300 hertz as well as 160 hertz, or you can just turn it off altogether. They do the same thing for the treble. You're going to get 3 kilohertz, 16 kilohertz, or you can just defeat it and turn it off. Right above that, we have our speaker selections. This incorporates 3 sets of jacks for speakers. So you have A, B, and C, and simple on-off switches for each set. So you can run them in any configuration you want to. Up above that, there is some peak wattage meters here. It looks to me like 600 would be a very generous estimate for this receiver. I would believe, again, this would be a peak value and not continuous. Looking at the side of this, it looks to be four outputs on each side. So I don't think 600 watts continuous is something this is capable of doing. We have LED indications for the speakers, and all of these LED indications are right above the top of the tuning scale here. and then of course one for each of the functions: FM stereo, auto lock, AM, FM, phono 1, phono 2, and auxiliary over there. Right below that, we do have some switches for the filters, low and high. And then they're going to give you a few features for the tuner. It looks like MPX noise filter, FM mute, IF band, and multipath, another popular feature for back in those days. The mode, stereo mono, loudness on and off, and adapter on and off. Adapter giving you basically a line in and line out if you want to add your equalizer into it, therefore you don't have to disturb your preamp and main end jacks. Let's see, picking back up in the center of the unit in the bottom here, we do have the balance control, followed by a audio muting, gives you minus 20 dB or 40 dB, or just off altogether. You do get a attenuated volume control, and then from that you have your tape functions, basically 2 tape monitors, and then a function for dubbing between 1 and 2 or 2 to 1, and then of course your functions on this: AM, FM, phono 1, phono 2, and auxiliary. And of course incorporating a mic mixing jack into this in case you want to sing along with your favorite songs, and then of course flywheel tuning on this one. Very nice weighted flywheel tuning. 2 meters for the tuner, 1 for the signal, and then a 1 for the tuning center. They did make a notation that a SAW filter is used in the tuning of this unit, tuning board of this unit. So there's going to be our front. Let me go ahead and flip it around. As you would expect, it's quite heavy, and we'll pick back up looking at the rear of it. All right, picking back up from the rear of the unit, we'll start up here at the top where they give you some external connections for AM and FM antennas, even incorporating a 75 ohm coaxial connection for the FM, as well as 75 and 300 ohm binding post. And they also give you one for the AM. Rod antenna appears to be in nice shape. Right below that, the ground for both phono 1 and phono 2. Auxiliary, and then for the tape monitors, and tape 1 also gives you a DIN connection as well as RCA jacks. And then tape 2, just simply the RCA connections. All these are labeled play and record out. The adapter in and out, there's a switch in the front. You flip that switch on and it will allow the signal from this unit to pass through another piece of equipment, whether that would be an equalizer or perhaps even a reverb unit would have been popular back in these days. The FM multipath here, there's 2 RCA connections, one for horizontal and vertical. What you would do here, connect these to an oscope, and you would be able to see that waveform on the screen and adjust your antenna for minimum distortion or minimum signal loss, I believe is what they would want you to do with these. We'd have to confirm that in the owner's manual, but I do believe that's what these are for. Preamp out, main in. In the event this is not powerful enough, you can pull the jumpers and you can route this, the preamp portion of this directly to another amplifier. Or if you wanted to, I suppose you could use another preamp with the main amplifier of this unit. They're going to give you 3 AC outlets, 1 switched, 2 unswitched, and then at the top you're going to get the push button spring connectors for 3 sets of speakers. And it looks like they have the grounds on the outside, the positives on the inside here. So not anything too surprising, laid out pretty much as you would expect any receiver to be back in these days. So I think our next step, let's go ahead and get some speakers hooked up and see if the unit will tune into a station and the tuner works. So give me a moment for that and we'll pick back up. All right, picking back up with you. Got some speakers hooked up to the unit. Everything initially here seems to be working just fine, so it looks like he was given some good information. The unit does operate. And we got pretty much no controls issue, no noise in the controls. All the controls seem to be fairly quiet. No intermittent dropout on the tape monitors. All the meters working. Signal and center. Basically just using a jumper clip right now for the antenna. And both of our wattage meters also working. All right, so we made it through this. I think the next step, let's go ahead and open it up and we'll take a look at the inside of the unit. Get a good visual inspection of things. So give me a moment for that and I'll pick back up with you. All right, let's come back in and we'll take a look at the inside of the unit. Went ahead and removed that half wooden case and the grate from the back. Could tell by the screws that it had definitely been opened up before, but from looking at the inside of it, it doesn't look like anything has been changed. All the lights in the front look to be working just fine. So maybe that was the reason for opening it up at one time, maybe. Huge transformer mounted right in the center. Bando is the brand. And then Nippon caps. Large Nippon caps. Like chunky soup can size. Two in the front here and then two smaller ones in the back. Very beefy amplifier circuit. Lots of supporting components here, obviously. 4 outputs on each side. And it looks like they did plug sockets to where you can take the amp channel out and work on it if you want to, maybe. As for the outputs themselves, I don't know if we can tell what's in there or not. They're Hitachi outputs, but I can't get a fix on the number. We'll have to take the grates off to see that. Looks like all the power supply components are underneath. We'll have to take the bottom off of it to see all of that. It looks like the amplifier channels have 2 fuses in them, each one. And I can't see anything on each side of this that would indicate that anything has been changed. It all looks original to me, which is a good thing. I noticed that each channel of this, a little warm. One's a little warmer than the other, so I'm sure the idle current is probably drifted a little bit. We'll see if we can touch that up. Otherwise, again, still working just fine. So yeah, very nice, laid out real good. I mean, again, very Pioneer-esque, I guess, in appearance here. They got a shield over the IF section of the tuning. Nice big tuning capacitor here. The relay board for all 3 sets of speakers, but I would imagine that and then all your tone and preamp stuff here, I guess. But I would imagine the power supply and the associated components are underneath. So, all right, so for now, let's go ahead and get the bottom off and take a look at that. See if there's anything there that would indicate we've had any work done. But from what I can see here, it still looks original to me. So maybe somebody opened it up and cleaned the controls since they're nice and quiet, or maybe changed the lamps. But otherwise, it doesn't look like there's been any work done on either one of the amplifier channels of this. So let's go ahead, let's go a little further. Let's take the bottom off and take a little closer look at that, and I'll bring you back. I'll bring you back in real quick here just to take a look at the screws in this. You can tell it's been taken apart before. We got some pretty good gouge marks in these screws, and that's pretty much the case with all of them. So it's not virgin, she's been opened up. Even the bottom of it's been opened up, but I would imagine you would need access to the bottom of it even if you're going to clean the controls. We've got a screw missing right there. I'm not sure if that's the initials of the person that owned it at one time or what. Looks like WSF. That's what that looks like. So, all right, let's go ahead. Let's get the bottom panel off and take a look on the inside here. All right, as I come back in with you here, I went ahead and got the unit stood up on the end and removed the bottom panel from it. And just as I started taking a look at things under the bottom of this, kind of just started down here at the bottom where you can see we've got the mainline fuse coming in. and where all the AC outlets kind of intersect, and that all starts to junction together and branch out. Got one bridge rectifier there for 2 of the caps, and then we've got a little more power supply circuitry here. Got one relay probably for power. Huge, what appears to be a 15-watt resistor right there. And then again, another bridge and the other 2 caps. As we get to this board here, I started looking down through this, and we've got what appears to be either preamp circuitry, tone control circuitry. I don't think all of this is power supply. There's a couple of small relays here, or yeah, small relays here it appears. And then we've got 2 ICs. This might be the phono preamp here. I noticed that we have a resistor in a sleeve, or maybe 2 in series, put in one of these heat sleeves. And then we have another relay. This is probably the actual protection circuit relay. And then we get to this, and I notice that we have the same deal as up here. The only difference is this one's not connected to the board. There's an actual hole there for it to go in, but it's definitely not connected. Let's see here. Yeah, it goes right there. Let's see if we can tell what it is. Not sure I can. R733L, which is 733 left, I assume. Because this one is probably 733 right, maybe? So I'm not sure if that is something for the protection circuitry. I'm not sure what that is, but it has definitely come out of the board. This is definitely not a board that's going to be easy to take out. There's a few screws that's holding it in, but it's all hardwired in, so it's going to be a little bit of a bitch, but we got to get that out of there and find out why that's not connected up. So I think the next thing I want to do is take a look at the service manual, and let's see what these are and why we got a working receiver with a fairly large resistor not even in the circuit. So give me a second for that. Let me look up the service manual, and we'll take a look and see what this resistor does. So give me a moment for that, and then we'll pick back up. All right, let's go ahead and pick back up. I was able to get this board freed up here. Basically 6 silver screws. I did have to cut a couple of wire ties loose, and it'll give you just enough slack on a wire to where you can get this kind of edged out to where you can get to the back side of it. I basically just put a little tension on it to kind of hold it in place using a jumper wire here. And here's what I can tell you. Looked at the service manual, took the sleeve off the 2 resistors. We got 2 4.7 ohm 3-watt resistors in series, and those couple in series with what appears to be a 0.1 100-volt disc cap. And right here we do have our actual protection relay for the amplifier. Both channels left and right come into this. Once you turn the unit on, assuming you don't have any faults or no DC on the speaker outputs, this will click, and of course it'll send signal back out to the speaker relay board for A, B, and C speakers. So what they're doing here is they're taking this along with the cap coming off each side, right and left. There's one here for the left, and then there's one up here for the right. And they send this into the meter circuitry on the negative side. And so I'm not sure, both of our meters are working, so I'm not sure how they're using this, but we're going to go ahead and put it back in place the way it's supposed to be. And from what I can see here, and you can tell that this is actually the position that this goes in right here, and it looks like there's a pin in there, but I can't tell if it just kind of broke off or what, because there's no heat stress here. Even in the regulator section of this, these huge transistors right here in the power supply, even in this regulator section, there doesn't appear to be any cold solder joints there either. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this back where it goes and solder it back up, and I'll get this board put back in and get these wires kind of tucked away into their little holders as they go in. And as I go along, I'm going to go ahead and check some of these caps with my ESR meter. I'm sure probably all of these are probably fine. Maybe some of the lower value ones could be on the fringe of going bad. If so, we'll change whatever needs to be changed. But for now, let's go ahead and get this put back in. And again, not sure how they're using that, but both of our meters work. But this is where this leads to, back into the wattage meter section of the circuitry. So let me go ahead we only need to really tack up the one joint, so I'm not going to bring you back for that. There isn't anything too spectacular about soldering up one thing, but I'll go ahead and take care of that, and we'll get the board put back, and then we'll go a little bit further with this one. So give me a moment for that, and we'll pick back up. All right, let's go ahead and pick back up. Went ahead and got our power supply board here put back in, and everything looking pretty good. Went ahead and got the 1 series resistor pack mounted back in where it goes. There was not a pin in there as I'd originally thought. It was just a kind of a hump in the solder. So I don't know if the pin just wasn't set good at the factory and just came out because of the tension that the resistors were on, being bent like that. That's one possibility. Went ahead and replaced our wire ties here just so we can kind of get it back to factory. And I'm still a little bit puzzled just simply because of the fact that we do have a receiver that's been taken apart, but I can't see anything that's been done to it. There didn't appear to be any resoldering done or anything else that I can see. So maybe somebody was just in there cleaning the controls. I did notice that it looks to me like the faceplate has been removed. In order to clean these controls, you would probably have to pull this board out. As a matter of fact, I know you'd have to pull this board out. You're not going to be able to access these without getting behind this board, so maybe that's why it was taken apart. As for our little resistor assembly, again, going over to the meter section on the negative side, not sure how they're doing that. Maybe somehow in a way to limit current going to the meters to prevent damage to them. That's one possibility, I suppose, but all I know is we had one, both meters were working before we even did that, and of course everything is still working now too. So I think what I want to do next, let's go ahead, I think everything's working fine. Let's go ahead and take a look at the idle current. I had a chance to take a look at that in the manual, and we'll want to tweak on that a little bit and kind of get that a little bit more in the ballpark of where it's supposed to be. But for right now, from what I can tell, everything seems to be working fine. I'm going to go ahead and run all the inputs on this. There's only a few, and if there's anything exciting about that, I'll bring you back. But for the most part, I think we're not really finding anything here. Other than that resistor being kind of not mounted to the board, not seeing anything else. So let's go ahead and pick back up, and we'll have a look at the idle current, and I guess we'll get ready to wrap this one up. All right, as we come back in, went ahead and got the bottom of the unit put back on. Had a chance to do a little bit of cleaning up just to get an idea of what this thing looks like, if it's kind of detailed out. It's very nice, it's in good shape. There's a few scratches here and there if you're being really picky, but there isn't anything too terrible about this at all. Even did a little wipe down on the inside, nothing crazy. It wasn't too dirty on the inside anyway. So the next thing we're going to do, I've had it on running now for about 30 minutes, and I do notice that one heat sink is just a little warmer than the other one, so I'm sure the idle has probably drifted a little bit. It's probably not a bad idea. The adjustments for these is very simple. There's one adjustment just for the idle current. There's not one for DC offset, as so many of these older receivers have. Not a bad idea to put a drop of control cleaner in this and exercise it a little bit before you start making your adjustments, and I will do that. But there's 2 test points on each side of the amp right over by this connector right here, and there's a matching set on the other side. So it's real easy to do the idle current adjustments. So I'll go ahead and set you up in the tripod, and we'll do that real quick, and we'll get this one wrapped up. All right, so picking back up with you, we're going to have a look at the idle current setting on this unit. According to the service manual, 11 millivolts plus or minus 4 millivolts is what they're wanting you to set this at. So it could be as high as 15 or as low as 7 and still be within the range of what the manual says. Now this left side over here felt a little cooler than the one on the right hand side. Now this one's set at 12.6. That's well within what they say that it should be, but we'll try to back it down and get it within that 11 millivolts. And this is a setting that you can drive yourself crazy with trying to get right on the money and probably still never get it perfect because there's too many things that affect it and cause it to drift. So I think if we can get it within the number, 11 millivolts, we're doing pretty good. We'll let that sit there for a second, and then we'll move over to the other side. It's one of those things, it's a really touchy adjustment, so you got to really, you're not even really turning it, you're kind of just putting pressure on it and a motion to turn it, and it kind of gets it to move a little bit or change a little bit. It's very, very touchy control. So yeah, it's probably just going to kind of bounce around plus or minus within that 11 millivolts, and that's fine. I think that's, if you can get it that good, you've probably done pretty good. So let's move on over to the other side, and we'll try to keep the meter in the shot. I'm just using alligator clips on my probes here, and you'll want to make sure that you don't short anything out when you do this adjustment, or you'll have a real bad day at the office. So this one's running about 17, like I said. It seemed to me like it was just a little bit warmer than the other one. So let's see what we can do about backing this one down. Like you get it right there, and then all of a sudden, all right, let's see where it goes from here. If it'll stay within that number, then that's where we'll leave it. We won't mess with it any further. So I mean, there's probably a lot of things. I haven't really done any research on this receiver, but I'm sure if you start looking on the internet, there's 1,000 things you can do to this. Change every cap in it. It's probably the first thing they'll say, or change the transistors to this, or change this to that. There's probably lots of upgrades, as they call them, you can do to this, but in this particular case, we're going to leave it alone if we can't justify changing anything. And customer does have a tendency to want to keep things as original as possible. So yeah, it looks like it went up a little bit high there. So we'll let it sit there for a second and see what happens. Sometimes that spot in the potentiometer has been sitting there for so long in that one spot, just trying to get it right in that area and get a good connection on it can be difficult. So a lot of times there's recommendations to change those. In this particular case, I think we'll leave them alone. I think we're okay here. I mean, it's still well within what the book is saying. Like I said, 11 millivolts plus or minus 4 each way. So I think we're going to leave this alone. It looks fine. Like I said, that one on the right-hand side we're doing right now was just a little bit warmer than the one on the left-hand side. And so I think we're come a little ways and making some improvements on it. So, all right, I think we've done enough to this. Couldn't really justify doing anything else to it. Everything else seems to be working. I did try all the inputs. They all work, including both tape monitors, both phonos, the auxiliary. So I think we'll go ahead and we'll do a final play test on this one and wrap it up. So give me a moment for that. All right, right, as we pick up one final time, having a look at this beautiful old Hitachi SR-2004. As always, I want to thank you guys very much. Appreciate you checking out the video this time, as well as all the videos on the channel. Thanks to all of you that's reached out to me in comments or email. If I have not responded, I will. It sometimes takes me a few days or maybe even a week, and I have time to sit down and look at those things. But very nice old piece here. I can definitely see the attraction to this. And again, it's kind of pioneer-esque in its manufacturing process, but a lot of them were back in those days. That was kind of the benchmark they all were trying to meet, thanks to Pioneer's dominance in the market back in those days, I would imagine. Didn't find a lot going on here, just the one resistor pulled out of the board. Went ahead and soldered that lead back up, and everything's working fine, but it was working fine prior to us doing that too. But we did touch up our auto current a little bit and did a little routine cleaning for him, so everything's got a pretty good bill of health here as it gets ready to take off. So as we make our way out of this one, let's take one last listen to this Robin Trower Bridge of Sighs album. Probably second favorite song from this. This one's called In This Place, so we'll listen to a little bit of this as we make our way out. And again, as always, thank you guys very much.
In this place, full of empty space, your soft and tender love will always shine for me. Now I know what it means to have you gone down